And we are now live.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Pursuant to Community Charter Section 166, a council must undertake a process of public consultation regarding the proposed financial plan before it is adopted. Welcome to the community budget meeting for the 2020 fiscal year for the District of Sechelt. Director of Finance Dave Douglas will provide an overview of the draft operational and capital budgets and will be taking questions at the end of his presentation. Today we have members of the public joining us through the Zoom online meeting platform. We currently have 7 participants on the line and all have joined on the online platform, none by telephone at this time. We ask that you hold your questions to the end of the presentation. Everyone is automatically muted when they join the Zoom meeting. If you have logged in online, there are 3 ways you can ask a question. You may use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen and we will call on you to ask your question verbally, or you can type your question into the Q&A section of the Zoom platform. You can also send an email to finance@sechelt.ca. For people joining with a telephone line only, they can use the shortcut *9 on their phone pad to raise their virtual hand if they have a question. And with that, I will hand it over to Director Douglas. Oh, we are not able to hear you, Dave. Are you muted? Oh, you're muted.
Can you hear me now? Okay, just going to share my screen. All right. Thank you everybody for coming. My name is Dave Douglas and I'm going to be running through the 2020 to 2024 5-year financial plan. I'll be discussing the 2020 in greater detail and just discussing trends 2021 through 2024 that are showing in the budget. The plan for tonight will be to go through the 2020 general operations and then review the 2020 general capital and projects. Then we're going to jump into the sewer operations for 2020. Sewer capital for 2020. We're going to review the 2020 to 2024 5-year financial plan. I have a couple of tax samples for everybody and a little summary, and then we have a question period. So into general operations. So the District of Sechelt has 2 operating funds. One is called the General Operating Fund, and it is it holds the larger revenues and the larger expenses. And the areas that we account for in this fund are the airport administration, arts, culture, building inspection, building maintenance, bylaw enforcement, communications, corporate services, community grants, economic development, engineering, financial services, human resources, information services, library, line painting, mayor and council expenses, parks, planning, public works, which includes road, sidewalks, drainage, street lighting, RCMP, risk management, solid waste, street sweeping, and wards. This is the start of just to look at the 2020 to 2024 5-year financial plan for the general operating fund. And the first thing that is going to stand out here is the revenues for, is the revenues for 2020. So that's this number here. We're increasing revenues by $553,000 this year. Sorry, we got to take these 2 into account here. And we're increasing revenues by $401,000 this year, of which $57,000 is for new construction, and the tax lift is $353,000, which is the 3.8% over last year's taxation. The trend going outward is going to be a heavy reliance again on taxation for next year. And as we go out further to 2023 and 4, the taxation increases become a little bit less than what we're anticipating over the next couple of years. Fees and services, we're budgeting for less fees and services this year over last year. That's primarily due to building revenues, planning revenues, and engineering revenues coming in less than what we had in the previous years. As going forward, we expect our revenues to be probably a little less next year and then start to recoup in 2022 and then again in 2023. So this is just a sign of the times right now and where we're at. Under investment income, we're budgeting $462,000. Although that's a $33,000 increase over the previous year, there's two things that are involved here. We have investment on income, which we've budgeted at $240,000, and that is less, significantly less than what we actually achieved last year. Two reasons. One, this is going to be an interesting year with payments with regards to COVID-19, and the interest rates have come down significantly over the last couple of months. The other part of that is what we call actuarial revenue, and that is we get that from from the borrowing that we have taken out in the general operating fund. So we have a couple of debts there that we get a return on from MFA. Hang on, I've lost my okay, so then the next one is grants and donations. So we are budgeting for a little bit more. Now there's two grants and donations accounts that we have here. This one is what I call standard grants. And this would have the gas tax funds in it, as well as a small community grant. And then there's other grants down here that are really through an application process for capital. So I'm talking about this one here. We are getting an additional $200,000 grant this year. And it shows here, and then next year it goes away. And so now we're back down to our two standard grants in this year here. Other revenue, we've budgeted approximately $14,000 more than last year. Kind of brings us up to what we had this year. But the trend here is that it's going to stay flat going outwards over the 5 years. Transfers from DCCs, or development cost charges. Now we bring these monies in here to cover capital expenditures or capital. And so you can see that we're bringing in a significant amount of funds from our development cost charges. This is mainly roads and drainage here. As we go forward, you can see there's still going to be a reliance, a little bit less next year, but then it comes up in 2022, and then the reliance is back off again for a couple of years. The projects that these are funding are the Trail Bay project right now on roads, and the Trail Bay project on drainage. Capital contributions, grants. So these are grants that we had applied for, and the grants we've applied for here are really relating to the airport. the runway extension. And we have a couple other grants that have extended out that we've applied for that we haven't heard back on yet. And they'll be coming in, we hope to hear in the near future about these. The other grant that's in here is a BC bike lane grant for bike lanes in the Sechelt area. So that's kind of the history there. And grants are often, often you don't apply for grants that go out more than 2 years. They're just not available. When they become available, then you have to spend them within a 2-year period usually. So that's why this is budgeted like that. Okay, on the expense side, once again, we'll talk very soon more about 2020 and just talk about trends here. The general government increase of $386,000 this year in expenses. One of the items is being funded by that $200,000 grant that I talked about earlier. This is a fence that's going around a problem property within the district of Sechelt. So then the rest of the increase is due to contract and wages and a host of other expense areas within the general government area. When it comes to planning and development, we are planning a very small increase of $4,500 for 2020 over 2019. And the trend here is that it would stay, it would actually go down a little bit here in 2021 and then slowly rise over the next number of years. That is because we are doing some project work here. We're doing a OCP review, and so that's budgeted here. The expectation is it would be mostly done within the year, and so then that expense wouldn't flow through to the next year. Public Works, we're looking at a decrease here in Public Works overall by $254,000, and the trend is slow. It would be, well, we're looking at a decrease here and then slowly increasing over the next number of years going outward. Facilities, increase in facilities. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. $63,000. We have some work that we need to do on some of our buildings, maintenance and other. And so it's causing an increase in our facilities. So $650,000 this year, a little bit less next year, as we're actually, one of the things that's not included in this line item, we're doing an assessment on our buildings this year to find out its condition and get a maintenance planning going on what we need to be spending on our buildings in the near future. And as you can see, the trend is just a slow increase over the next number of years. Police services, $91,000 increase. Now that's not all due to the police contract. The police contract portion is about $24,000. A grant we used to give out from up in the community services area, we're now put it as a line item in the police services area, and that's for victim services. So we are budgeting for that just differently. So that's why there's a bit more of an increase showing here. The trend here is upward. Our CMP contract annually shows an increase, and so that's what we're going to carry forward from here on out. Solid waste. We are looking later in the year to increase the service level to solid waste. Right now we collect garbage and recycling, and we are planning to add organics to that. So we do weekly organics, bi-weekly garbage, and bi-weekly recycling. So a little bit of an increase there, and over time that will continue to increase as we collect waste. So the next section of the general operating fund is the capital, debt, and funding. So this is where we hold our principal debt payments here. So currently we have debt payments of 517. And before going further, see down here under this one, proceeds from borrowing. We're going to be borrowing a little bit of money this year for some equipment, and then again next year. And so the trend here should see the principal payments going up. So here we go over here. And yep, the debt principal payments will be going up in 2021, and it should further go up in 2022 and stay up. And then we have some debt finishing a little bit in a couple of years from now. So then it will come back down. So there's two trends there: borrowing for a couple of years and debt payments going up a little bit. Capital purchases for 2020, we're budgeting for $13.9 million this year, and we'll go through what some of that looks like. And then the trend here is we're going to be back down to 7.8 next year, 6.7 the year after, and then drops down a little bit in the future years, 2.6 and 2.5 million. The transfers to and from capital, we'll review those a little bit later, the transfers from. But in here, the gas tax money and the gas tax money flows through into the transfers to reserves, as well as $700,000 that we tax for goes to this capital reserve right here. And so we pull out money we need for capital out of the money we put into the reserves. So what's in the 2020 budget? Okay, so one thing that's in the 2020 budget is a few projects that were carried over from 2019. And so this is not new tax money. This is money that we taxed for last year. And we will be doing these projects here this year. They'll continue into this year. And so the first one is sewer modeling. And sewer modeling is it's actually several things. One of the things that it's going to do for us is help us determine the capacity of our water resource center. And through this process, we'll be able to review our development cost projects and look at increasing our development cost charges to our developers. The other thing this is going to do is help develop a capital planning for the district. And it'll help us collect data to be able to apply for more grants down the road. So that's what the sewer modeling is for us. Bylaw 430, this is a rewrite of one of our bylaws. We have a consultant working on this now, and we've had one or two public process meetings, and there'll be a couple more down the road. Child care planning. You'll see that not only is there's some money carried over from taxation from last year, but there's a number of these have grants attached to them. And so, you know, we've received the grant money, but we are, so it's not all about taxes here, last year's taxes. So we have child care planning at $2,500, records management carry forward of $10,000. OCP upgrade update for $80,000. Arts grant for $1,700. Another arts grant for $18,200. Suncoaster Trail, which was a grant from the BC Rural Dividend Program of $19,300. And then the Selma Park Davis Bay Sewer Functional Plan, there's $19,218 there. So what else is new in the 2020 budget? We have a few additions that are tax. These are tax related here to the tune of $107,000. We are adding a second engineer into the district, and we needed to put a little bit more money aside to fund that position. Public works, public washrooms, so this will be up in the parks. Currently, we hire somebody to clean, and we just need to clean a little more regular basis. So that's $8,900 for that. Power tailgate for the parks vehicle, $6,000. Building bylaw review, $7,000. New hot water tank and other maintenance at Rockwood for $20,200. Records management, new money, $5,000. Stacking chairs and tables for Seaside. We've been very active in trying to rent out our facilities more, and so in doing that, we've created a need for a little more services within the buildings, and so that's $10,000. Water conservation planning. Now that was a grant for $10,000, so we have to bring in $5,000 of new tax money. And reclaim water planning, again a $10,000 planning grant, of which we have to contribute $5,000, so it's $107,000. Other things that show increases to our budget. These are more operational in nature, and we are just showing them by object or by function, or you could use several different words here, but salaries and benefits, $87,000. RCMP contract, $23,000. We've reduced the contingency by $25,000. Transfers to our own funds, we've decreased that by $163,000. Utilities, hydro, water, increase of $45,000. Library grant, decrease of $7,700. Changes in IT, some of our contracts, we have a couple extra softwares that we're using, so $48,000 increase. Grant revenue increase of $200,000, $237,000, of which $200,000 I described earlier. Reduction in the wharf parking revenue of $12,500. Increase in fuel sales of $20,000, and revenue decreases of $166,000. The other thing we're starting this year is to put money away for the next election, and so we're putting $7,500 annually into reserve to cover the $30,000 election that happens every 4 years. We're increasing taxation by $410,000, and we have budgeted to see a reduction in our penalties and interest on taxes to the tune of $58,000. Cost of goods sold, increase of $20,000, of which a large chunk of that would be the increase in the airport gas. Traffic fine revenue decrease of $35,000. Legal fees increase of $50,000. Insurance increase for $4,500. We're getting a little bit more revenue from our RCMP building by $13,000. And we're budgeting $5,000 less for business license revenue. What else increases or decreases? We have small rental and small equipment purchases. It's gone down this year over last. MFA actuary income has increased by $18,000. Community grants given out, it's increase of $86,000. One council meeting ago, council made motion to put aside $50,000 for the COVID-19 relief within the district of Sechelt. So that's part of that increase there. Building inspection permit decrease in revenue of $120,000. Training, we've decreased our training primarily because a lot of the planned conferences and training have been canceled. So we've taken those out of the budget. We're seeing an increase in revenue here with solid waste. Last year, we started receiving payments from Recycle BC. So that helps cover the costs of our solid waste. We don't anticipate solid waste going up this year due to the change in service levels for solid waste, and we'll be annually monitoring that. Planning engineering fees down $25,000. Interest income up $15,000. Communications decrease in their budget of $5,900. And so jumping down to supplies here, this isn't just office supplies. This would be supplies for public works. So one I know that increased significantly was salt, purchases of salt. And so that's part of our supplies budget. And then other increases would be to other materials and supplies that we buy for the use at the district. Small increase in debt payments of $12,053, and contracted services increasing by $11,069. So this is all our increases and decreases, including taxation. And so the end result here is a 0 at the end, but by object code, you can see where the extra money is being spent. So we'll jump into general capital, and I've summarized, it's quite a long list of capital. And so there is, on our web page, we have the list of all the capital for 5 years. And so I've summarized it into 7 headings: vehicles and equipment, $310,000, parks and community infrastructure, $235,000, facilities, $4,563,000. Large part of this is phase 1 and 2 of the airport runway extension, of which we've applied for 2 separate grants for that. Information technology, $167,032. Drainage, and this would be drainage on Trail Avenue for $7,690. Roads, $6,084,000. Majority, not all, is this would be Trail Avenue as well. And sidewalks, walkways, $1.4 million. Once again, a good chunk of this is a grant we've applied for. We have not been awarded that grant, but we need to be budgeting for it. We've applied for it. And if we don't get that grant, we will not be going forward with that project. So that's the list of the capital, and this is where the funding is coming from. So the capital total here is 13 million, same as the previous page. So we're bringing 1.5 million from capital reserves, 245,000 from MFA financing, gas tax reserve, 1.1 million, public safety reserve, 197,000, development cost charges, $6,121,000, general surplus, 118,000, public works reserve, and this would be for the first stages of a public works building, and so that's $844,000, and that's coming from a public works yard reserve, and then grants and contributions, $3.7 million, and as I said earlier, a majority of this is for the airport runway extension. As we go out, you can see our capital, as I described earlier, will go down to 7.8, 6.7, and then further down. You also see that our reliance on the development cost charges is fairly high, and although a little bit of a dip next year, this is phase 2 of Trail Avenue that we're planning for 2022. So just a list of some of the bigger projects that we've got in our budget, capital budget. Trail Avenue, we're doing the roads, we're doing the sidewalks, we're doing storm and curbing. Airport runway phase 1 and 2, both of those have been grants that we've applied for. Wakefield culvert replacement, Wharf Avenue sidewalk, that's the sidewalk grant that we've applied for. District building improvements. There's numerous improvements we need to do to some of our buildings. Public Works building, that's the start of planning to construct the Public Works building. We have a bike lane project in town, and we're going to, we've got that grant, so we're moving forward on that. Vehicle replacements, we're looking at replacing 3 vehicles and adding 1 new piece of equipment. Computer equipment replacements, and all our computers are on a 4 or 5 year cycle, depending on usage and who has them. And so that's just some money to replace ones that need to come out of the cycle. We're doing a condition assessment on some of the district buildings, and I've already talked about this one. So now we're going to move over to the sewer operating and capital. The sewer operating fund is the other operating fund that we have, and it consists of our water resource center, which is the biggest asset in that operating fund, the Dusty Road pre-treatment plant, the entire collection system, which includes about 50 kilometers of underground sanitary sewer piping systems, as well as 9 lift stations. And we have an outfall that goes out to the ocean as well. So once again, a 5-year planning here. This year, we're looking at trying to bring $542,000 of new user fees into our revenues. So we'll be lifting revenues to $2.0 million, just over $2 million. We need this lift because we have a number of items that really need to be looked at this year, and I'll be listing those in a few minutes. The trend here from revenue perspective is another bit of a lift next year, and then as we go further, the lift starts to settle out from a user fee perspective. Over the years, this fund has really been underfunded, and there's some maintenance that absolutely needs to be done, and it's very critical. And this has caused us to have to take this step right now. Parcel taxes will remain the same this year. The only increase here would be to new homes coming on, or in the parcel tax area. The other area that we really looked at this year was our Septage Receiving area, and we're looking to bring in additional revenues there too by increasing the fees for dumping. When we take the sewage from a hauler, it is our responsibility to treat it, to dispose of it, and and so what we're finding is that we're having some significant costs coming up, and we need to cover those. But the fees from septage needs to cover them, not user fees from sewer. So we're looking at increasing our revenues here quite significantly, and then again as we go forward, probably small increases down the road, and we'll explain what some of those expenses are in a few minutes. Investment income. So the sewer fund has its own reserves and surplus. So we budget for the revenues here in this revenue line. Transfers from development cost charges. Once again, these are to fund capital. So you can see that the reliance on development cost charges in sewer is significant as well. We're going to use 427,000 of DCCs this year, 200 next year, 300 the year after, and then the trend here is it's going to keep climbing as we do more and more work within the sewer area. The other thing that we have here are grants, capital grants that we apply for, and so we've applied for one particular grant for the Wakefield lift station. and this needs to be replaced this year. This project will go ahead whether we get a grant or not. If we don't get a grant, then we will bring this back to council to for their approval to borrow money to do this work. But this lift station needs to be done this year. We have, like I said, we applied for a grant and we're hoping to get it. Going forward, we're expecting other grants to come into play with regards to our sewer system. And often there's more grants related to clean water and this area than other areas. So expenses within the sewer operating fund, sewer administration, just a bit of an increase of $32,000. And the trend here is just small increases within the administration area of the sewer. Collection, a little bit different here. We're increasing this budget here by $256,000. However, it's partly a shift. We have people, in the previous year, we've had people budgeted here, wages budgeted here in the treatment area that actually do work in the collection area. So what we're trying to do is just more accurately cost out what is collection costing us, what is treatment costing us. And so there was some diversion of salaries from here, treatment over to collection, but there's also materials and supplies in here as well. So the trend here is it just we'll just kind of continue along, not big increases, unless we find something that needs to have some work done on it. Treatment plant, although we've moved some costs from treatment to collection, the treatment area went up $233,000 this year. And that's due to some critical work that needs to be done. I'll have a list coming up here in a minute. And so we're looking at $1.7 million for maintenance and operation of the treatment plant. And going forward, you know, we've added some costs in here each year, and we'll go through those in a few minutes as well. Septage Receiving, Dusty Road. Once again, this is the cost to operate it. We don't see that changing too much over time as we go forward. So we're down to the capital and funding and debt of the sewer operating fund. We have debt here, and annually we pay out $740,000 for principal payments on the WRC. And before we go further, we'll go down here, and yes, we're borrowing a little bit of money for the sewer operating fund, $500,000 in this year, and $350,000 here. And of course, because we're borrowing this year, the debt payments are going to go up next year and further the year after. So that's the trend. The trend is showing that our debt payments will go up for the next couple of years. And I believe in 2025, this debt would be going away. So this one's coming close to an end. And then capital purchases, we're budgeting for $1.7 million of capital this year. Again, $1.7 million next year. And then we'll come down to $1.1 million, and slowly we'll see 2 years of increases after that. So since we're on the capital stream, we're going to talk about projects that are included in the sewer budget. So we have a number of things that need to be done within the sewer area. And so this is part of why we need to lift the user fees. We've separated into two categories: one-time costs and then new costs, but they'll be ongoing forever, essentially. And so one-time costs with liquid waste management planning, whacker pumps for emergency response, Norris Bay lift station, some electrical upgrades there. And these out here are the values for the work to be done. Dusty road, solid handling. So what we have is we dredged a couple of the ponds up there, and so we have some septage drying out, and so we need to we're going to be finding out how we're going to deal with them, what level of septage they are, and so that's a study we need to do on that. The outfall inspection, we have some issues with our outfall to the ocean, and we are doing some inspection work on that. That should come up pretty quick. Diffuser replacements in the FBRs at the resource center. Although this is a one-time cost here, annually, this will happen every 4 years. So annually, we should be putting a quarter of this away into a reserve, so we don't have a big hit every 4 years. We're going to buy some spare parts for the lift stations and software upgrades to the greenhouse control. So jumping down to the new but ongoing costs, spare valves. This is going to be an annual thing that we need to keep our inventory up on spare valves for the WRC. Gas detection and flow servicing calibration has to happen annually. Greenhouse maintenance will be an annual maintenance cost of $6,000. We've added a new full-time person at the WRC who will also work in collections for $72,000. Headwork servicing needs to be done annually. HVAC and boiler service needs to be done annually, $9,000. Blower service, $10,000. And servicing odor control system, $14,000. So the total lift for this area is $312,500, of which, you know, probably the majority of that will be ongoing into the future. So as we had in the general operating fund, this is just a summary of all the changes by object or by function or by, you know. So we are increasing our overall revenues by $807,000. And that's a combination of septage fees as well as user fees. Salaries and benefits increased in this fund for $154,000. Debt interest decreased $16,000. Training, we have some fairly high level trained people at our treatment plant. We got to keep that training up, so that's $12,800. We're budgeting increase in hydro water to $22,000. Contracted services, this is a lot of that list that we just went through for $211,000. And the other part is supplies for $122,000. And insurance came down in the sewer area by $1,100. So 212. So in the end, after all our lifts for revenue and all our new costs, we'll have $212,000 available for capital. And you'll see we're going to be spending that this year, most of it. Anything left over will go into a reserve for another year. It'll be a very small amount. So this is what we're expecting our user fees to look like this year. So for residential, we'll go up to $494, which is a $123 increase. Senior citizens apartment rate goes to $304, which is a $76 increase. And one of the commercial rates, there's other ones, will go up to $1,041, which is a $261 increase. The parcel taxes will remain the same at $274. So Dusty Road, or the Septage Receiving area, we have, like I said, we have some biosolids, not biosolids, but solids on the ground drying. They have to sit there for 2 years, and then we need to dispose of them. And so that's next year, budget amount of $500,000. In 2022, we're expected to do some more dredging up there, and then that will sit on the ground. We'll sit and dry out for a couple of years. The other thing we're doing next year is a site closure plan, or plans around what will it look like up there in the years to come. Our lease is, we have a lease for about 11 more years, so we have to start planning what are we going to be doing there. And so that's $150,000. And then, of course, once we take this solids out of the pond, we have to dispose of them a couple of years later, another $500,000. So this is money we do not have, and this is why we need to increase the fees for septage disposal to capture enough money to fund all this as it comes up. So what we're looking at is currently we charge 23 cents per imperial gallon, or $50.60 per cubic meter, and we're going to be increasing that to 51 cents per imperial gallon and $112.18 per cubic meter. So what will that give us? Well, it gives us a really great start this year. For half a year, we'll be able to more than double the amount we put into reserves this year. And then in future years, we'll be able to put $500,000 into reserve to cover those costs that we just went through. Council and staff are really feel this is a cost, should be a cost covering area of its own. We do hold the responsibility once we take those solids that we manage them until they're disposed of. And so we need to increase the fees to make sure that it's self-reliant. Sewer capital. So this is, so the sewer capital for this year, $1.7 million. How is it going to be funded? Well, we have sewer capital reserve of $18,000. We have sewer development cost charges of $427,000. User fees. So I think I said a minute ago, we had $212,000 available for capital, of which we're spending $192,000 this year. So the little amount that's left will go into reserve. Grants and contributions, $638,000, and that's primarily the Wakefield lift station, and MFA financing for $500,000. And if you see the trend here, the trend on user fees will increase next year, go down a little bit, and then increase again. And then the trend for sewer capital reserve will low this year, but it will increase as time goes forward. Same with development cost charges for sewer. Will go down next year, but then the trend will be an increased reliance on sewer DCCs. So this is the capital list for this year. The filter test bath was a carryover project from last year for $18,000. Camera to inspect the sanitary mains. We have water leaking into our mains, sewer mains, and we need to find out where they are so we can get corrected. We are doing an assessment on our outfall, and we expect repairs that are going to be needed there. So that's $500,000, and that's the financing, MFA financing. Additional membranes for the plant, $96,000 to optimize our plant. Roof replacement at Dusty Road, $12,000. Wakefield pump station. So this is the one where we applied for a grant, and we're going to use some user fees. However, if this grant does not come through, this project needs to be done this year. So we will bring this back to council and fund it alternatively. And finally, Trail Avenue Force Main, $200,000 from DCCs and user fees. So just a quick summary here of the sewer operating fund. We have the sewer operating fund is underfunded, and we're trying to take steps to alleviate that. Critical work needs to be done, and so we have to get through some of this critical work in the next 2 years. Our treatment plant is 5 years old now, and some of the working parts are needing to be replaced or needing to be refurbished. Yes, we're looking at a significant increase to septage fees, but that's so we can make this area self-funding. Proposed to increase sewer fees to pay for the critical work. It does have to be done, unfortunately, and we need to get some of this work done. We're planning 1.7 million in capital, and we're adding 1 full-time equivalent into the sewer area. So the next 3 slides are just the consolidated 5-year financial plan. I don't intend to go through it too much. Everything that's in that is a consolidation of both the general operating fund and the sewer operating fund. And this is the way our bylaw will look. It will be a consolidated financial plan. And the reason that we do it consolidated is so it really matches up well with our financial statements, our audited financial statements. So the readability between the financial statements and the consolidated financial statements and the consolidated 5-year financial plan should be easier. And as we go forward, we'll continue to look and make sure that they are very readable to each other. So as I've talked about going in the past, everything we talked about is included here, as well as in the individual funds. So here's our sewer revenues here. This is where they come into the consolidated 5-year financial plan, and the rest up here is all general. And then there's a mix down here of sewer and general from contributions from other sources. Expenses, the same thing. Our sewer expenses come in on one line here, down here in the consolidated budget. And the rest of this just comes from the general operating fund up here. And down here, this is truly consolidated. So our amortization is both sewer and general. Principal debt payments are both. Transfers to and from reserves, capital, and surplus are all from the general and the sewer, all consolidated together. Proceeds from borrowing, once again, are consolidated together. And capital as well. Now I have a few examples and a little section on class multiples. So this is what our taxable assessments are in 2020. And when we got these totals, residents, this total came down due to the market conditions that are in Sechelt. Now, that's not current conditions, that's what happened last year. So there's always a delay from your assessments from one year to the next. So the assessments overall went down about 5% for residents last year, while business went up about 3%. So that doesn't happen very often. Often it's your resident that is leading. If there's a change upward, it's usually residents is ahead of the curve and business follows. However, this year our residents assessment came down in general and business continued to go up. So what that creates is creates a play with the multiple here on the other side of the sheet here. But so these are the revenues from each class. that we're expecting. And what this is basically last year's tax number plus what we would get from new construction times 3.8%. So, you know, although the class multiples are almost get reset, you know, annually to a certain extent. But this year, a little bit more. Last year, the business class multiple was 2.39. This year is going to be 2.23. So what that means is business pays 2.23 times what residential pays in taxes, and that applies to every other class that shows here. So you know, every one of these lines here, this is the business. We added new construction in the business area, added 3.8% tax increase, and we came up with this dollar value over here. And so that was affected that class multiple. So overall, residents still pays the lion's share of the taxation, 85.4%, to business of 12.1%, and then the other classes quite a bit less. So I have a couple tax examples here. This is a residence that last year had a value of $679 and came down a little bit this year due to the market. And so school taxes should be on this house about $23 more. Our 3.8% will show a $78 difference on this property. FCRD 27, and then recreation down a little bit. Fire protection, $11 increase. MFA, $1 up. And BC assessment. Garbage fees will remain the same, so there's no difference there. The sewer user fee going up $123. Water parcel tax going up $14 on this residence. And so overall, this property will pay $246 more for taxes this year over last year. So they would have paid $4,940 last year, and we'll pay $5,186. So that's taxes up here and utilities down here. This is the utility area. So overall, the taxes went up 109, but when you add in your utility fees, 246. Business, very similar thing. This business last year was valued at $900,000, and assessment went up a little bit this year. So the province has, for 1 year, given the business relief due to the current situation going on right now of school tax. So this property here would see about a $1,600 decrease in its school taxes for 2020. And then when you add in the municipal increase of 156, SCRD 161, fire protection 76, BC assessment, municipal finance authority 3, they're going to see a reduction in their taxes of $1,247. So they would go from $10,770 to $9,523 for taxes. And then when you get down to utilities and other, the business improvement area just basically stays the same. Sewer user fees will go up to $61. Water parcel tax is up $14. So the overall decrease for this property for taxes and utilities is $975. So they go from paying $12,551 to $11,575. The other significant thing coming forward this year is that although our due date for taxation will stay the same at July 2nd, we've changed our penalty dates for to this. So the first residential penalty will be July 3rd at the value of 5%. And so that isn't a change from last year. However, the thing that has changed is the second penalty date has been extended from September 1st to October 1st with the other 5%. Business class, the provinces would like to see the first penalty date for businesses for October 1st, 2020. And so that will be our first penalty date for that. However, the due date is still July 2nd, but there will be no penalty on July 2nd for businesses. These classes 5, 6, 7, and 8. Classes 1, 2, and 9 will still see a penalty on July 3rd. And then the second penalty date for businesses, class 5, 6, 7, 8 will be December 1st, 2020, and that would be the further 5%. So this is quite a change for a municipality in several reasons. One, likely, and we've budgeted for our penalty revenue to go down. Number two, we may experience some cash flow issues. And so we will be taking steps, which we'll talk about in a minute, to ensure that we do have the cash flows necessary to operate the district. And but we have payments that leave the district office the first week of August in the amount of about $6.8 million. So we had to keep the first due date and penalty on July 3rd for residences. We needed to ensure we had motivation for the residents to pay because we have that first payment or that first set of payments that come out in August. The second penalty date for residences we just matched with the first date for commercial. And so that gives an extra month for residences to pay their taxes without penalty. And then we have another large payment that will have to leave the district office in December, late December. And that's why we chose December 1st as our next penalty date to have motivation and to pay for businesses to pay their taxes by December 1st. So a little summary here. Property taxes increased 3.8% plus new construction. The district is anticipating a reduction in paid revenues for 2020. So staff are putting a bylaw in front of council. It's called a revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw. And it allows the district to borrow money based on revenues it has not received yet. It's like kind of having a line of credit. You pay it down as you get your tax money in. It's not a long-term debt. It's not, I wouldn't even call it like short-term, like 5 years. It's not supposed to be that either. It is really intended to bridge you within the current year, or it can go into next year, but really it's to bridge you through this period of time when the current economic conditions are unstable here. And so we do expect to have less taxes paid by the due date. We are hoping it won't be significant. So we are planning to put this bylaw in place with council endorsement for $12 million. And this would be only used in anticipation of getting our payments, and to only make payments that we have to make. Like I was saying earlier, we have to make $6.8 million worth of payments in the first week of August. We are, at this point, we really think we'll have the money necessary. but we need to have this bylaw in place just in case. In the previous years, the district was adding 3% cumulative amount on the taxes to put away for capital expenditures. This year, we're not doing that. We're hoping that we can do that again next year. The capital projects that we're looked at, they're going to be funded from all sources of income, reserves, grants, taxation, surplus, and some borrowing. The district has made adjustments in its property tax penalty dates, not the due date, but the penalty dates. And as I just discussed, we're putting in front of council a revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw that will only be used if we need to use it. Thank you for coming. If there's any questions.
Thank you, Dave. Sorry, I was muted there. We'll now be taking the questions, and we have been rotating between the online, email, and telephone questions, but this evening we don't actually have anyone on the telephone line. At this time, there are no questions in the question and answer, and we actually don't have anything in our finance inbox. I'll just take another quick look at our other inboxes, but there is nothing. So I'll ask if anyone would like to raise their virtual hand by clicking the button on the bottom of your Zoom window there, and speak verbally to any questions you may have.
Carrie Ann, we have a question in the question and answer.
Oh, we do. Sorry, I just saw that pop up. Thank you. And the question is, what surplus and reserves do we have, and are there any restrictions on using them?
So the two things, there's if you use the reserves that are in reserve accounts, they usually need to be spent on what they've been accumulated for. So if we have a sewer capital reserve, the money needs to be spent on sewer related capital and can't be used for different purposes. So generally that's a rule of thumb. The province is allowing some freedom from that to not to use the reserve, but use the funds as bridging in this time as well. And so it would be construed like the revenue anticipation borrowing, where you're utilizing the funds, but the money's staying in the reserve. Yeah. Sorry, was there a second part to that question?
Nope, just what surplus and reserves, well, the question is what surplus and reserves have and any restrictions on using them.
Yeah, we have several reserve funds and accounts, and most of them have a couple $100,000 in them, not a significant amount. But our DCCs, we have a few reserves there that are up over $1 million or so, or one of them anyway. But I had a sheet here. So that's, yeah. So although we have reserves and we have surplus, it is limited.
Just to follow up with that one, Dave, this person is also wondering where they can find details on the surpluses and reserves. Are they available online at this time?
Yes, we're taking our audited financial statements through to council next on the 6th of May as well. And the reserves, which are listed at that are listed at, this would be a December 2019 balance at $7.8 million. They are listed in the financial statements there.
Okay. Next question, why is there such a large drop in public works expense? This is in reference to slide number 6.
Good question. I don't think I have the detail in front of me, but I certainly will answer that online.
Okay. And that's all I have seen so far. I'll just ask if there's any raised hands, if anyone would like to speak to any questions. We've got one from Councillor Tom Lamb. Tom, you're on live now. Oh, but you're muted.
There you go.
Okay.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Um,
Pardon me?
we can hear
Yes.
you.
Okay, good. Okay, so the district of Sechelt, in general terms, our budget is approximately $10 million for the district of Sechelt. And we're hoping to be able to borrow $12 million. So is that $12 million, is that so that we can cover the amounts that would be due to the other governments?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So what we can borrow on is the value we tax out. So when we tax, we not only tax for the district of Sechelt, we tax for the regional district, for the school district or the school taxes and others. And so we're allowed to borrow up to 75% of that value.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we have another question. So many people are out of work. What do you do if 10% of taxpayers don't pay by December 1st? Or maybe don't pay at all for years? How will this be managed?
Well, in the current year, it would be managed by the revenue anticipation borrowing. That can go on longer than the year. So the other things that we're looking at is we're going to be strategically doing the capital work that is been listed here. So if there is a project that is not under grant and not under timeline, we will delay the start of those until we know we're going to have enough funds paid from by taxes to do those works.
Okay, thank you. And not seeing any other hands up, I will go back to the email and just see if we have any further email inquiries.
We have a follow-up question in the question and answer.
Oh, thank you. But capital work doesn't impact operational taxes. Question.
It may not, it may or may not, but if we don't have the cash, this comes down to a cash flow question, not necessarily where the money is or isn't. So even though I have reserves to pay for a capital item, I need to hold as much cash as possible because of the cash flow problem that may come forward.
Okay. Not seeing anything in the email. I'll just look for confirmation that there's no new messages in the finance email. Oh, and we've got another Q&A online. And it's a follow-up. It is the cash flow, but if 1 million of taxes are not paid for all of this year or longer, what do you do?
Revenue anticipation borrowing, or not start capital works. One of the biggest issues we will have is to maintain our cash flow, and staff will do that by curbing the amount of capital that is started, and by borrowing revenue anticipation borrowing if need be.
Okay, thank you. Now, one more question. Do you not use recurring taxes for capital projects?
If we by the 5-year financial plan earmark reserves for a capital project, they can be used on that project. Yes.
Okay, there's a comment. I don't think that's a question, and I believe it has been answered. Seeing no other questions, was there anyone else who wanted to raise their hand and speak to the topic? Not seeing any new emails at all, and we still don't have any callers in on the phone lines. Everyone is online, so we will be able to see if hands are raised or if there are any new topics for the Q&A. Again, we have already spoken to the revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw, so additional questions for that could probably be emailed to Director Douglas at ddouglas@sechelt.ca. I'm sure he'd be happy to provide some additional information on that. Okay, not seeing any other questions online, no raised hands. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and thank you, Director Douglas, for another great presentation. And yes, there is one more question on logistics. The presentation is already published on the website. It has been live streamed. The live stream video is available for anyone to view or share as they would like. All questions and answers will be published on our budget page on our website, as well as on our For the Record page for ease of searching if you're looking for a specific topic. You're always welcome to email Director directly, ddouglas@sechelt.ca. You can also email Mayor and Council at council@sechelt.ca. Questions can also be sent to finance@sechelt.ca. Once again, thanks very much, everybody, and we'll be signing off.